Scary fishing encounter. When I was 13, my dad took me out for my first time trout fishing. We went to a popular small creek up in the hills outside of town. Dad stopped at a large fishing hole where most of the young kids fished and helped me set up my rod. There was a group of about 5 or 6 other kids fishing and lined up along the creek. Once I was set up, within no time I had landed my first brown trout. My dad decided to go upstream a spill and fish down to where I was and said he would be no longer than a half hour. He said his goodbye and I grabbed my pack, which had a sandwich which we had packed the night before, and I began hooking another mealworm onto my hook. After about 10 minutes, the group that was fishing beside me began packing up and jumped into the back of an old Dodge truck, pulling away, leaving me by myself. I thought nothing of it at the time, as back in those days we were on our own from daylight to dusk outside, getting into one thing or another. I decided to move up closer to the base of the fishing hole, and as I picked up my rod and pack and started moving upstream, I heard voices and footsteps behind me. At that moment I thought nothing of it, as people seemed to be passing through, fishing up and down both sides of the creek. As I sat down from downstream, I heard a bone-chilling scream and the sound of running footsteps crunching on the leaves coming directly in my direction. I instinctively dropped my rod and jumped behind the nearest tree and peeked from around it in total shock, as it seemed to be about to erupt from the surrounding brush just a few feet downstream. However, everything went quiet and all I could hear was birds chirping and the sound of the creek water. I was too scared to call out for my dad, as I was afraid whatever it was may hear, and I did not want to bring any attention to myself, so I stayed behind the tree for what felt like an hour but was more like another 5 minutes, when my dad arrived with some trout hanging from a stringer attached to his waist, with a big smile on his face, and asked, "How you make out, kiddo?" As he approached, he took notice my rod was lying on the bank and I was behind the tree with what I imagine a terrified look on my face, at which point he ran up to me and said, "What's wrong, son?" Before I could open my mouth and explain, the same terrified scream let out, along with running footsteps coming directly at us. Dad swooped me up and we were in the truck and halfway down the mountain in about 30 seconds.